welcome to the Hindu analysis for 1st March 2021. Let us begin with the first article today. ISRO puts Brazil Amazonia 1 and 18 other satellites into orbit. So, Indian Space Research Organization on Sunday successfully launched Brazil's optical Earth observation satellite named Amazonia 1 and 18 other co-passenger satellites, 5 from India and other 13 from United States. So this mission is special because of two aspects. One is it's a space cooperation project between India and Brazil, and the second thing is this is the first dedicated commercial mission from the ISRO organization. So in the previous budget, the government has created a new arm or a commercial arm of ISRO called New Space India Limited. The New Space India Limited will undertake commercial payloads from private players or other countries for certain prices. Until now, whatever the private cargo that was being carried by ISRO, it was being done through government to government agreements or company to government agreement. But with the creation of New Space India Limited, it can undertake directly between company to company, meaning ISRO to the New Space arm to any other vendor or company that wants to put some cargo into space. Now, coming back to the aspect of India and Brazil cooperation, in 2007 we signed an agreement with Brazilian government to use their resources, meaning they have large radio array stations that were built in Brazilian outback, and the government needed access to those radio telescopes there. In order to accommodate that, in 2007 we linked a special arrangement which allows Indian scientists to access Brazilian ground station to remote sensing data from Indian satellites. So it's a win-win situation for both. They have the ground station capability, we have the payload carrying capability. So it's a win-win situation for both of our countries. Coming to the next article, vaccine for people aged 60 and above from today, and along with it 45 plus with comorbidities also will be eligible. Now the phase 2 of Indian COVID-19 vaccination drive has begun, and people who are 60 years of age or above and those in 45 to 59 age bracket with comorbidities can get the COVID-19 vaccine. They can get the vaccine if they are eligible for the vaccination. They have to register themselves on CoWIN platform on their website. Now, people with comorbidities must furnish a certificate stating that they suffer from the comorbidities, and it has to be signed by a registered medical practitioner. Coming to the private aspect of it, if the person or the eligible candidate wants to get vaccinated at a government facility, the vaccine will be administered at free of cost. But if they want to get vaccinated at a private hospital, because there is less chance that they are going to be delayed, because private hospitals have this ability to maintain buffer stocks and all. Now, if they want to get vaccinated at a private hospital, the government ensured that the price does not leapfrog depending on the demand. So they have capped the price of the coronavirus vaccine at 250 rupees per vial. Meaning for a single dose, it would cost only 250 rupees, and the government has set the limit at, or the ceiling limit at rupees 250. For the 250, rupees 150 is the charge for the dose of the vaccine and 100 rupees is for service charge. But it amounts to around $2. But companies are unhappy that the government has put a ceiling on the coronavirus vaccines at 250 rupees. They argue that when the World Health Organization itself has capped the price of the vaccine at $3 minimum, why the government went a step ahead and set the ceiling at $2 minimum. So they are a little bit unhappy, and they didn't want the government interference in selling the vaccine. But you have to understand that this is an essential item, it's not a luxury item, and government sealing the cap at 250 rupees is a positive step, because 250 is affordable in the current climate. Anything above 250 becomes a burden to major section of our society. This ensures that people who have less access to financial resources are also able to afford private hospital vaccination centers. So coming to the next article, find designated areas for feeding stray dogs in 𝑦𝒐𝒓𝒕𝒉𝒂𝒌𝒖𝒓'𝒔 High Court. So they have to understand this article. We are considering this article only for the aspect of the court's interference in dealing with stray dogs. So if you have observed for the past few years, there is a disturbing rise in children being mauled to death by dogs on the streets of India. So public safety comes under the domain of local governments, but there seems to be little that they are doing to ensure that people are not bitten by stray dogs or children not being killed by stray dogs, because whenever you go outside your home in residential areas, there is a greater chance that some street dog is going to attack you. So people started carrying sticks, people started changing their routes just because of the herds of stray dogs that are attacking people. This trend of dogs attacking people has exacerbated in coronavirus pandemic because there were no people to feed them. Earlier there used to be these dog lovers who used to come into your locality and they used to feed those dogs. But now, since they are not able to come and feed them biscuits or whatever they were feeding, these dogs became more angst and restless. So they started attacking more and more people during coronavirus lockdown. Now, in the particular case of this 𝑦𝒐𝒓𝒕𝒉𝒂𝒌𝒖𝒓'𝒔, there was a fight between the Residential Welfare Association and dog feeders, people who love dogs and they want to feed street dogs. And the court said, in order to avoid any further rupture between those who are feeding the dog and those opposed the feeding of the dog, the government said that, the High Court said that let us designate a special area for the dogs to be fed so that the dog feeders can come and feed them there, and the residents cannot oppose to this because they are no longer being fed everywhere in the colony, just in a designated area. So what is the problem with this? Why does we have a stray dog issue? And since the Prime Minister is also encouraging everyone to adopt a local breed or a desi dog, then why is this we are seeing the dogs being captured and being really released into the same colony or other colonies? So the law is a little bit of a complicated pickle here. Now, the Animal Welfare Board of India exists to enforce the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act of 1962. The domain of stray dogs comes under the Animal Welfare Board of India. Their entire goal is to prevent the suffering of domestic animals and fund shelters. But they got the additional job of taking care of stray dogs, that is street dogs. But the law that was being circulated by AWA is very unscientific in nature, because they actually say that a person getting in the way of a dog can be perceived as an example of provocation, meaning whatever the dog does, the human is at the fault. So a dog which bites human repeatedly cannot necessarily be termed as a nuisance, and vet is liable to be sued if he puts the biting dog to sleep at his master's request. Even though you have the fact that the dog is rabid and it is biting people for no reason, and the owner chooses to get the dog to euthanized, you can actually sue the doctor for doing it. So though the owner has requested it, just for following it through, the vet can be sued. So the law is very unscientific in nature. There is no backing for it. And coming back to the Indian fact, India has by far the highest number of rabies cases in the world after Congo. So even though our neighbors are having a very scientific principle where if you find a dog which has rabies and which is rabid in nature, that dog gets put down. So we have adopted a very unscientific and unnatural principle, putting the dog's life above the human life. There are certain judgments in high courts, various high courts, whether it may be Delhi High Court, whether it may be Karnataka High Court in 2012, but none of these things answer the problem of how to address the stray dog issues. And everywhere you go, you find that there is a fight between the Residential Welfare Association and the local dog feeding group, which comes into their locality on a daily basis or regular basis and feeds those dogs. So this is a continuous issue, and a solution has to be found. Coming to the next article, PM calls for border conversation drive. So during his weekly Mann Ki Baat, Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Sunday said that there needs to be a start to conservation of water right away. Meaning, in the future, we will be facing a shortage of drinking water or potable water. So we need to ensure that we have the practice or we have the infrastructure in place to harvest rainwater or groundwater. So we have to conserve water. Conservation is an important aspect of ensuring water will be available in the future for drinking or general use. Now, during his Mann Ki Baat, he said that there is an urgent need to start to conserve water, and he suggested that the 𝑗al-Shakti mission, which is interested with securing the water resource for our country, would be launching a 100-day Catch the Rain campaign. There was a need to have collective responsibility on water conservation. So one person does it and the next doesn't. It doesn't work like that. In order to actually have an impact on water levels or have enough water to ensure future needs are met, it has to be done by a collective, meaning everybody should take part in this movement. Now the campaign will be called Catch the Rain campaign, and it has to be a collective effort done by everybody, and it will be spearheaded by the 𝑗al-Shakti mission. The second aspect of it is the Jal Jeevan mission. Jal Jeevan mission aims for providing piped drinking water to all rural households in 2024. It is called Nal Se Jal Yojana. So if the government is successfully able to implement the Catch the Rain campaign in complements with the Nal Se Jal Yojana, it can be easily understand that we can easily understand or conclude that if both the programs, that is Nal Se Jal Yojana and Catch the Rain campaign, work in tandem with one another, where one provides water through a pipeline to a household and the same household builds basic infrastructure to harvest the rainwater, the groundwater levels in that region might actually go up, ensuring that whatever the water that they are getting through the pipe never dries up. So it will become a self-sustaining cycle where they themselves will be supplying their water for their own needs. So the campaign is called Catch the Rain campaign, and the Jal Jeevan mission, which aims to provide piped drinking water to all households in 2024, is called Nal Se Jal Yojana. Coming to the next article, China Parliament to mull expand border drone use. So China has this principle where they are not using large and heavy drones in the border areas. Whatever they are using for reconnaissance and observations, those are small drones. Now the Chinese army or the People Liberation Army is going to introduce a new bill in their parliament or their communist committee, to allow for the usage of bigger and much powerful drones. Their idea is to increase their reconnaissance and presence capabilities in the high altitudes of LOC. Now this poses a little bit of a conundrum to Indian side also. Right now, drones are harder to track and harder to disable. If the Chinese starts deploying larger and larger drones that are able to carry heavier payloads, meaning they can carry high powered cameras or thermal cameras or even weapons if they choose to, this poses a little bit problem to our security establishment in the border areas. So it's just a proposal at this time, but you have to understand they are using high altitude drones on both sides of the border. India is using high altitude drones, China is also using high altitude drones. This particular talks about small drones that are capable to stay in the air for longer periods of time. It's called loitering time, meaning they can stay in the air for longer periods of time. Coming to the next article, LOKI bidding likely at spectrum auctions. So the government is gearing up for the next phase of auction of spectrum airways, including 5G airways. Now it's a much awaited telecom spectrum auctions, and analysts do not anticipate large sums to be deposited, or the bidding will so analysts are a little bit skeptical of how many people are going to participate and how much money the government can earn through these spectrum auctions. So a total of 2251.25 megahertz of airwaves are for up the grabs from the companies. As I said earlier, analysts do not anticipate large scale bidding, and they also expect that operators are not going to bid for new wavelengths of spectrum. They are just going to bid for whatever they have, just to retain the license for their own using airways before the expiry of the spectrum comes. So the idea behind spectrum auction is that whenever you bid for a frequency, if you win that bid, you have rights over that frequency for a period of 20 years. So that is why most of the auction that has took place in 2001 or 2002 is at the end of their lease agreement. Now they have to renew it. So that is what they are going to do. They are going to rebid on the same frequency just so that they can ensure the license on that particular spectrum retains with them for another 20 years. In the last spectrum auction, which was held in 2016, about 40% of the 2355 megahertz of spectrum was put, but only that much was sold. So worth 5.6 lakh crore put on auction was sold. So out of 100%, only 40% of auction was bought during 2016. Based on that, the analysts are saying it might be a repeat case of 2016, where only 40 to 50% of the spectrum put on the auction block might get sold. We have to wait and see how companies are going to bid for it. As far as who are going to purchase these spectrums, 3 private operators, that is Bharti Airtel, Reliance Jio Infocomm and Vodafone Idea, have submitted earnest money deposit. Earnest money deposit, nothing but they are going to deposit money in advance just to showcase the intent that they can put the entire money in the case they win any bid. That is called earnest money deposit. Now only 3 companies have come forward for the auction, that is Bharti Airtel, Reliance Jio Infocomm and Vodafone Idea. Coming to the next article, need to reset India-China trade ties, Foreign Secretary. So this statement comes at a significant time where we are having a border crisis with China. It is not only a border crisis, it is also economic crisis, because our trade with China is skewed towards the Chinese side. So here our Foreign Secretary 𝑣𝒐𝒓𝒔 is saying that he is remarking that the normal bilateral trade relationship with China was contingent on peace and tranquility on other fronts, meaning we can do trade with them only on the basis of peace and tranquility on the borders and other areas. They are challenging India in 2 domains. One is at Ladakh area, that is northeastern border area, and in Indian Ocean region. So he is indirectly saying that we can have only trade with them if they don't challenge us or show aggressive moves in the land domain and in sea domain. Now the country was looking to diversify its trade dependencies. Now we are trying to diversify our trade dependencies. During coronavirus pandemic, it showed that how much we were dependent on the Chinese raw materials for our pharmaceutical industries, the Chinese electronics for our car manufacturing, the Chinese raw materials for our polymer industry, that is plastics industry, because they were supplying raw materials, we are just manufacturing using those raw materials. So India recognized that we have to diversify our trade dependencies and become independent of certain countries. Now the current bilateral trade with China is at 78 billion and it is heavily tilted towards in Chinese favor. 78 billion is not a small in our import basket. So it has a heavy implication on our own industry also, because how much we are paying through our own money to Chinese, which they directly use against us in Ladakh areas and in Indian Ocean region. So we are directly funding their army for them. That is what the idea behind this saying, that we have to diversify our trade dependencies. As China continues to be one of the India's most important trade partners, the balance of trade is skewed in the favor of China. So we have to rethink our strategies, and we have to also consider the ongoing disturbances with the China in the eastern Ladakh area. And the process of disengagement, though is helping, is not the entire solution of the border dispute. We have to define the border just to ensure that we don't have any future problems. Now we are introspecting that we have to make our own industry a part of a more resilient supply chain that can meet the global demand. So his statement as a foreign secretary carries weight because it clearly shows the thinking of the government of India right now on how it is trying to tackle the Chinese aggression in Ladakh area and in Indian Ocean region, with direct relation to our trade imbalance with Chinese industries. Thank you. Have a nice day.